I started writing songs when I was quite young, and I was about 12, I think. And I lost interest in school entirely, and really just wrote songs for most of that time. So as soon as I possibly could, I wanted to go and start making a record. And so I went back to London, where my dad was living at the time, and sort of put a band together very quickly just in order to make that first album. And it wasn't what I wanted at all. It was sort of, I was pleased with the record, but it didn't feel like the band I had always sort of dreamed of having. So it took about 3-4 years to make that album, and then 2 weeks after it came out, I broke the band up and I went back to New Zealand to put a new band together. I mean, it sounds very adolescent, that album. I was a real little kid, and I mean, I suppose the influences were probably fairly similar to what they are now. I still listen to the same people like Tom Waits and Dylan and, you know, all the sort of obviously great ones. I'm very up and down. Sometimes I like that first record, but I've said it before, but it's like reading an old diary from your youth. So there's bits that sort of, oh, that's sweet, you know, and there's other bits that you just want to sort of burn in the fire and for no one to ever see, except, you know, you can't do that because it's out in the world. And that's just what happens when you release an album of songs you wrote when you were 14. You know, it's a hard thing to deal with sometimes. But I think every record we've made's got better and closer to what I would like it to be. I broke the band up, and I went back to this little town called Devonport in New Zealand, which is where my mother lived and still lives. And I kind of wanted the people that I'd always dreamed of having. The first band, that it wasn't like that. I wanted sort of my best friends in the band with me, and so I sort of got Sophia. We went to the same high school together. We've known each other since we were 11. And I'd sort of posted her a bass in the mail and said, could you try and learn this in the next couple of years so that you could be in the band? And she did. So she joined. Then an old friend of ours, Liam, joined as well. And then for about a year, I was just writing songs back home, and then we came back to London again, and that's when we made the second record. And kind of since then, we've just been kind of touring, maybe probably for about 7 or 8 years, fairly solidly, up until making the last record. And this band's sort of changed a few times. We've had sort of the same core members, but a few people have sort of come and gone. Yeah, that just seems to be the nature of this band. Is sort of, yeah, it's the most stable it's ever been, which is good. It's very stressful otherwise. I mean, I'm half New Zealand and half English, so I'm kind of a straddler between the two countries. So I don't know if I can really speak as with the sort of perception of a New Zealander. England was always a part of my life because I was born there, and my dad lived there. So I always have kind of gone between the two. So for me, it was quite natural just to sort of, okay, I've finished school and go back to London. And I think it's quite different in New Zealand now. I think back then it felt like you had to get out of there because there was just no way you'd be able to be a musician there. But that's probably changed in the last 10 years, where, you know, not so many people feel that need now. You know, you can sort of, there's a good enough scene there. This band's sort of changed a few times. We've had sort of the same core members, but a few people have sort of come and gone. Yeah, that just seems to be the nature of this band. Is sort of, yeah, it's the most stable it's ever been, which is good. It's very stressful otherwise. We've sort of just been playing music. You know, we play live and we make records, and no matter what's been going on with the band, if people were coming and going, you know, I suppose it started out like it was just me with my songs, and I put a band around me, and it was that. I suppose the longer it's gone on, the more it's become an actual band, and it didn't come naturally, that band, you know. It's come over time to be what it is now, and it's all the richer for it. But I mean, we've always been touring, and and making records. Yeah, we're always either doing one or the other. No, I think it's, I mean, I think we're the best we've ever been. I mean, it's been a mess. I've had such a messy sort of career. It hasn't, I didn't think I'd have a career. It's been such a mess. Every year that we carry on doing it, I'm amazed, because everything's always sort of this chaotic thing, people coming and going and moving countries and touring, and, you know, it's never been an easy sort of path for us. It's always been uphill and very chaotic, as I say. But I think it's what's made us, I think we're on a really good path now. I think it's the first time in the last year or so that we're heading in the direction that's great, I think, and we know where we're going, I think, for the first time. And the first 10 years, I think, as a result of starting when I was 14, it was just, you don't know what you're doing at all. You're just sort of blown around at the mercy of anyone that takes an interest at the time. But we're a very strong band now, I think, and it's a very exciting place to be in, finally. Last year was entirely touring. This year now we've just got a studio in London that's our own and that we can go to every day, and we can play and write, which is really hard to do in London, because this sort of space is difficult to come by. But we finally got that, so we can be playing all the time. And I mean, I write all the time anyway, but I tend to write a lot of shit, and then it gets better, or you sort of edit it down. But, you know, I write hundreds of crappy songs, and then you sort of edit them down into a good crystalline, perfect 10. That's usually the way it's gone. Oh no, I don't think they're anywhere near sort of being freestanding poetry. You know, I think they lean on the music, and the music leans on them. I hope in a nice way. It can be many things, I suppose. I think you just get a little spark that excites you enough to want to. It's just a motivational little spark. That's all I ever feel in me. It's usually to sort of entertain your mind in some way, or to sort of get something out. I feel very lucky that I've always had, I was saying before, you know, we've had a very chaotic time in music, and, you know, it was good to have someone that could give advice that you could, you know, take, and that's been through. We're weirdly very similar, the two of us, with sort of how we approach a lot of things. And my mother as well. They've both been around the music industry their whole lives, so I think it does make it easier when, you know, I suppose the only time it's been at all negative is it's very hard to do anything that they haven't done already. Sometimes a lot better than you have. So it's, you know, that can get annoying when you kind of want your parents to think you're, you know, it's hard to rebel against my parents. It's never been easy. But it's generally, you know, once we've finished an album, I give it to both my parents, and, you know, there is a little ritual with that, I suppose. But, you know, no one wants to be listening to their parents' advice on how to make music all the time as well, you know. It's nice every now and then, but I guess I've never had kids, so I don't know. But I think, you know, I think it's impressive when you're a parent and your kid does anything. That's how it seems to me anyway. So I think it's a bit like when if you've got a pet dog and suddenly it starts talking. It feels a bit like that when you sort of have a kid, and then suddenly, I think because I started learning music a long way away from my dad as well. I was in New Zealand and he was in England for about 5 years while I was writing, and so I think to him it's always seemed sort of like he's not really sure where that came from in me, because one minute I had no interest in it, and then the next I was on tour. So I think it's always been quite strange. I think I've always tried to maintain our independence from any of that. I think we've never been a band that's particularly in fashion. I mean, the whole time we've been making music, we've been doing the wrong thing, or doing the right thing at the wrong time is probably, well, at least that's how it feels. The biggest everyday sort of part is being confident enough with what you do to not need everyone's sort of admiration for it at that time, or anyone's sort of, or for the eye of sort of fashion to be on you. if you can sort of soldier on doing your own weird little thing, then that seems